Welcome to the British Online School podcast. Today we are going to be discussing education and politics with Conservative MP Caroline Dinenage. Now, Caroline has been an MP for over 11 years and won 4 elections in her constituency of Gosport. During those 11 years, she has had many roles. I'm going to have to read them off because some of the names are super long. She is the co-chair and founder of the all-party parliamentary group for maths and numeracy, which we think is a fantastic thing. Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Department of Education, and your most recent role was the Minister of State at Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. Thank you so much for joining us today, Caroline.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to see you.
Brilliant. Yeah. So if we can begin with just a simple question, I've got to always ask, why did you join the Conservative Party compared to all the other parties that are out there?
Well, I suppose it was because I didn't come from a political background. I wasn't wildly interested in politics, but I started my own business when I was 19, and I was very well aware of how the local authority was being run and what was going on in the country. And I suppose that's what began to shape my own politics as I sort of carried on through the years of running my business. And then, the honest answer is that I was really deeply dissatisfied about how something was being run in the local area. And somebody approached me and asked me if I'd stand to be a local councillor. It was at the time, it was a Lib Dem run council and a Lib Dem local councillor. And I was asked if I would stand as the Conservative candidate to try and get on the council to do something about a local issue. And I did. And so that's basically how it all happened.
Oh, brilliant. So if we can move on to your first election as running for an MP, how did that feel like, having your face plastered everywhere? Because obviously your dad was on TV and he sort of had the limelight, and then it sort of switched to you now with everyone seeing your face and all the leaflets on the billboards and just everything. How did you go from being able to walk down the street relatively unknown to all of a sudden people really wanted to speak to you because they liked you or they hated the party? It must have been such a culture switch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It is a really big. I mean, obviously, I'm still not sort of wildly well known outside of my own constituency, but it is difficult because initially you're sort of sitting in a restaurant and people, you're in the shop and people keep looking at you and you're thinking, why are these people looking at me? And then after a while, the penny drops that they've obviously seen your face come through their letterbox in a leaflet, or they've seen you on a billboard. So you begin to kind of settle into it in that way. Largely, I'm really, really lucky, and I hope I'm not tempting fate here. Largely, when I'm out and about, people are always absolutely charming. Of course, that doesn't mean I don't get a grief online, but very, very largely the people I meet when I'm out in the shops or even when I'm standing on the high street doing, political surgeries and things, people are vastly friendly and welcoming and charming.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to online sort of stuff in a minute because I think that's quite important to touch on, especially being a school. But yeah, because Gosport is quite heavily Conservative, isn't it? You have quite a large majority there, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't always been that way. It fluctuates a little bit. My predecessor's vote, I think at one stage went down to just a few thousand. At the moment, my majority is 22,000, which is significantly higher than I ever expected it would be. But of course, you never take it for granted, and you have to always work really hard and make people understand that that your absolute priority is championing their interests in national government, and you can't ever take that vote for granted.
So let's build on that a little bit, actually, if you don't mind. So you've gone into the election, you've ran your campaign and you're waiting for those results. When it came in on that first night that you had won and the Conservatives were about to take control of government, during the situation, did you suddenly feel a massive weight of responsibility hit your shoulders, thinking, actually, I've got to represent these guys now?
Yeah, it was. I think it was particularly poignant for me because my constituency was unusual in that my predecessor had to stand down. That we had a big expenses scandal in the UK Parliament back in the first 10 years of the 2000s up to 2010. So my predecessor was the guy. I don't know if any of your viewers have ever studied this, but basically he bought a duck house and tried to put it on his expenses. And so that was really high profile. There was this big expenses scandal, and he was one of the biggest names in it. He was actually a charming man, and it would have been a horrible mistake, but of course, that's not the way it gets portrayed in the press, and so he had to stand down. And so I felt that for me, my constituents not only putting their trust in another Conservative member of Parliament, but actually with an increased majority from what he'd had. I got 14,500 votes in that first election in majority, and which was an increase on the majority he'd had. And I was really incredibly touched by that, and it put a huge weight of responsibility on me to make sure I do the job properly and don't let anybody down. But in answer to the question about how it feels, you go into election count, and it's the most nerve-wracking thing in the world. It's the most, utterly terrifying. And I saw the two piles of votes that were on the table, and they both looked almost neck and neck. And I said to one of my team, "Oh my gosh, it's so close." And he went, "No, it's not close. Caroline, look under the table." And under the table was a pile of my votes that they'd already counted, that they'd put to one side. And then I felt a bit better. But of course, literally up until the point that they read out the result, you're terrified that they're going to sort of somehow find another pile of votes that they've forgotten about, which is going to make it all go the other way. So you can't ever be 100% confident that it's all going to go your way right up until the final moment.
Right, that duck house is quite funny. I still see it on a few memes when you're going through social media, those duck house things. But
yeah, he was like, I always say, he was like the pin-up boy of the expenses scandal. My poor predecessor. He's no longer with us, sadly. He died.
Oh, that's unfortunate. But yeah, like I said, there's always more to a story, isn't there? And unfortunately, people always focus on the negatives. But while we're talking about that, actually, and you've already touched on it, the social media element of it. Now, as teachers, we do struggle with this. Kids getting bullied online, nasty things being said that be said online and not usually said to people's faces. And I think it's fair to say, as a member of Parliament, regardless of what party you are subject to that more than most, aren't you?
Yeah, I think everybody gets their share of online trolling, and I think there's a kind of confidence that people can say and act in a way that they wouldn't have the confidence to do to your face. Like I say to you, when I'm out and about in the Gosport constituency, everyone's utterly charming, and yet I get grief online. And often I think people have the confidence to say something online that they wouldn't say to your face. People can be really mean and spiteful. It obviously is worse for people in the public eye. I think it tends to be worse for in politics. It tends to be worse for women and those from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, and particularly women from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds are most badly affected by it. But I know loads of kids in my constituency that are affected by it as well. So it's a massive issue. Excuse me.
Okay, so that's really sad to hear, but how do you deal with that? And what sort of advice would you give to students who are suffering that on a smaller scale?
Yeah, so there's two things. First of all, there's stuff that the government and the industry has to do, because at the moment it's unacceptable. The amount of abuse online, the amount of actually illegal content. Some of the way that people are treated online, if you were to go up and treat them like that in the street, then that would be illegal, and you could be arrested for it. So what is illegal offline is illegal online, but it's not being properly enforced. And so when I was digital minister, which was up until last week, we were bringing forward a piece of legislation called the Online Safety Bill, which is about making much stronger links between what the online companies say they do to keep people safe online and to cut down on abusive conversations and language, and what they actually do. And this legislation is still going through. It'll be coming to Parliament sort of later this year. And it's all about just removing illegal content, but content that's what you might call legal but harmful. Online platforms having a much stronger policies for how they deal with that stuff and how they take it down. But then more broadly, that's what the platforms have to do, and that's what the government have to do. But we all have to take responsibility for ourselves as well and protect ourselves. So part of that is building a level of resilience about how you and also kind of some discipline about how you engage with the online world, not spending too much time there, not dwelling in it too much, because it is like it's like a rabbit hole you can go down and not emerge for hours on end, having watched sort of endless cat videos and things. So but and seriously bad online, they don't in most cases they don't actually know you. They're just very sad, pathetic individuals who really need to sort of get a life, and you need to kind of build that resilience in yourself as well, and just sort of try and stay away from those sort of platforms. But frankly, I don't read a lot of the comments on my own social media. I sort of use it very much to post, but I don't really read a great deal of what comes in, because it can be horrible and unnecessarily so as well.
Oh well, yeah. Obviously, that is such a sad thing to hear, isn't it? Because at the moment, you do feel like you're a lot closer to celebrities and politicians due to social media, and it does feel we can have that closer link. It's just a shame it's being ruined by those people. But you must have a bit of sense of pride, haven't you, with what you've started and you're going to see come through the parliamentary process and hopefully come into law.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this moves forward. It's a huge piece of legislation. No other country in the world has ever attempted to put forward anything quite so dramatic in the way of how we kind of almost police the internet. And there are really big sanctions, the sanctions of up to £19 million or up to 10% of annual global turnover for platforms that consistently don't abide by the rules. And there's going to be a new regulator, Ofcom, to make sure that they do. So it's quite a big piece of legislation, big complex piece of legislation, and hopefully will make a difference. I always think of it a bit like when we invented the motor car, sort of hundreds of years ago. You won't remember it. I was obviously sort of in my teens in those days. You couldn't bring forward all the legislation. And when they invented the motor car, there wasn't any legislation for sort of seatbelts or airbags or, in fact, even having a driving license. Gradually over the years, you bring in these iterations to make things better. This is the most sort of fundamental one-off piece of legislation we've ever attempted to do to try and protect people slightly more online and put a bit more responsibility onto the online platforms to keep people safe.
Oh, nice. That's fascinating. I'll obviously look out for that coming through. I think that's really interesting. And actually, as you started saying that, in the back of my head, I was like, legislating the internet, should we really be doing that? But then your comparison to the car actually sort of changed my mind as we went through that sentence. So yeah, I think that's a really nice way to put that across. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's a balance, Danny, isn't it? It's a balance between maintaining freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and letting people have the use of the internet for all those wonderful things that we know that it really can achieve. I mean, it's enabled us to stay in touch with loved ones and continue learning and working during all our lockdowns and coronavirus like never before. But of course, we all know it has its downsides, and it's about making sure we protect people.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really nice way of thinking about it. So 11 years, obviously you've just getting this really big piece of legislation coming through. But apart from that, put that to one side, because obviously that's coming up. What would you say is the most proudest moment of your career so far?
I think for me, so I've been really lucky. I've been a minister in 6 different government departments. I've worked for 7 different secretaries of state. It's been a long old journey, and I've had the opportunity to look inside a lot of different government departments and make little changes that hopefully will improve lives. But to be honest with you, the thing that gives me the most satisfaction is actually when I'm in my constituency, when somebody comes into my surgery and they have a problem, and you're able to sort of sort it out there and then, maybe a problem they've been wrestling with for ages. It might be something that's causing them enormous stress and worry. And when your office is able to sort it out, that makes you feel that you've actually meaningfully changed an individual's life sort of there and then, or very shortly afterwards. And there is, that's what the magic of this job, and it's what makes all the other nasty bits and bobs feel so much more worthwhile.
Oh, very nice. Is there one sort of story that stands out more than the rest?
Yeah, do you know what? It's a very sad story, actually. It was a lady that contacted me. She was very poorly. She had motor neurone disease, and she was really lovely lady. She was an ex-teacher, and she was very poorly. She got to the stage where she couldn't move around without this little wheelchair, which she controlled with her finger. She couldn't eat without being fed through a tube into her tummy. And she had to have carers through the night to make sure that they rolled her over to keep her safe and what have you. And yet her package of financial support hadn't kicked in, so they were having to pay for all of that through her own savings. And once you get to when you're poorly, once you get to a certain stage, this continuing care package should kick in, and it hadn't happened. So I literally went to see her in her house, and I came out and I immediately rung the chair of the local health group and expressed my concerns about it. And within about 24 hours, the care package had kicked in, and I got contacted by the lady. She died just a couple of months later, but I got contacted by her daughters to say that that intervention had significantly improved the quality of the last few months of her life. It had taken away all the stress and worry from her. And in actual fact, they invited me to the funeral because they felt that I'd made a difference to their mum's life at a time when, you know, she really needed that support. And, you know, it's things like that that I think are what make this job worth doing.
Yeah, that's great, because that's not stuff you read about in the newspapers or see, is it? It's those little stories. Like, I would never even have thought to ring an MP if something like that hadn't gone through. But yeah, that's a really touching story, actually, and must have been quite an honour. Did you attend the funeral, or?
I couldn't, unfortunately. I think I was probably working. That's the trouble with being an MP, is that you have we have all these votes all the time, and once you sort of sign up to be an MP, you sign up to basically attend all these votes, and so you can't always do the things that you want to do. But yeah, it was a really nice gesture on their part to invite me.
Yeah, very nice indeed. So before we move on to talk about your education, one last question based around your political career. What's next for Caroline? Are we looking at maybe the next female prime minister, or is it a different sort of role you've got in mind?
I don't know at the moment. So we had a reshuffle last week, and I up until last week I was digital and culture minister, and as I say, I'd been a minister for 6.5 years, 6 different government departments. So I'm quite tired, and I'm now back on the back benches again. So it's a good opportunity to just have a little think about what I want to do, what issues I want to campaign on. Because when you're a minister, you don't have the freedoms to be able to stand up in the chamber and speak about anything you like. You can only speak about stuff that's in your own ministerial portfolio. So I've suddenly got this newfound freedom. I have to learn how to be a backbench MP again, and start thinking about the things I want to get involved with more, that I've got a bit more time. And that's a great position to be in. And already I've had the most wonderful offers of organisations that want me to champion their cause. And so I'm going to look really carefully at it and see, you know, where I feel I can make a difference.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. We'll keep our eyes out for that then. So let's move on to your education then. So you said previously you were a business owner before politics, and then you've moved into politics and had a very successful career so far. I say 11 years as an MP for Gosport. Do you put any of your success down to your school education? Now, I always like to just add in here, we do like people to be honest. We appreciate we're a school, but we do know not everything can be learned and taught in a school. So yes, please be honest. And do you think your school education helped you become a success?
I think undoubtedly, and I think really even from a very, very early age, you know, from even from my junior school, it all played a part. I mean, all these experiences, they all help shape you as a person, and give you all the little skills that you need to be able to face the challenges of life as an adult, and all the things that happen in your career. And I think you know, there was so everything from you know, not just the things that you learn academically, that's all really important, but all the things you learn about how you work together as a team, and how you compromise and work alongside people from, you know, different backgrounds and with different attitudes, in order to all sort of live harmoniously together in your class. How you can sort of listen and communicate with other people, either sort of in an online setting or in a classroom setting, you know, and just all those lessons and all the teaching, it all sort of filters in and somehow gives you the tools you need to face the challenges of the world of work. Everything all helps, I think.
So is there one particular subject or teacher that when you entered the political frame you sort of relied on or looked back on more fondly or more importantly than others?
So, I mean, I suppose I ended up doing a degree in English. English was my sort of subject, and that's been really useful because you do, as an MP, you do have to do a lot of, articles for local newspapers. You have to write a lot of letters in response to people. You have to write a lot of sort of press releases and be able to draft things quite quickly and accurately. So I think my English has always been with me, although I wasn't wildly keen on my English teacher at school. However, the teacher I loved best of all, who actually turned out to be one of my constituents when I got elected, was my drama teacher. Her name was Peggy Lawton, and she was this tiny diminutive little lady, but with this massive personality, and she was so supportive of me. She felt that I had a great future as an actress. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint her. I didn't become an actress, but they sometimes say that politics is show business for ugly people. So maybe I've sort of fulfilled her ambition in one form. Yeah, a lot of what she taught me about being able to speak publicly and have that sort of confidence and presentation skills. I mean, all those are really important for a role as an MP, and you have to build that kind of confidence as you go along, really.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think as an MP, you do need that confidence in yourself. But all those letters that get sent out then to the constituencies are written by yourself, and is that common for all MPs to do, or is that unusual?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, we have a system. I have a team. I have a little team. There's sort of 3 people who work in my office, and everything that comes in, they see it, and then they'll suggest a response, and then it will all go into my e-box, and I go through every single letter and decide how I want to change the response that they've suggested. So we work together on it, and I think all MPs do everything slightly different, but that's my system. I never want a letter to go out in my name that I haven't seen, because I think it's really important that I understand what I'm signing when things go off to people.
Oh, that's cool. Because you've actually sent me a couple of letters to myself, and I've always wondered, I thought, I wonder if she wrote that herself. So that is nice to know that has actually come from you personally. So that's really nice. So thank you very much.
Well, next time I'll put a kiss on the end, then you'll know it's.
I'll hold you to that. I need to do something now before I get in that letter. So is there anything you wish you were taught in school that you think would have helped your career grow quicker?
I mean, I do think all those kind of public speaking lessons. So I did drama, as I say, but drama was an extra subject in my school. You had to do it during your lunch break, so it wasn't something that we did that everybody did. And so I think and I'm sure that may be different in some schools, but I think that those kind of lessons on how you are able to project yourself and speak publicly and communicate and all those kind of things have been so invaluable, because actually no matter what career you go into, whether it's teaching or whether it's any other sort of public service, there comes a time when you do often have to stand up in front of a room full of people, or in my case sometimes an entire auditorium full of people, and actually having those skills and more importantly having the confidence, not being frightened, is really, really valuable. But I think the other lessons that are just really important are just learning how to manage your time efficiently, because like in a job like mine, you get so much going on, that you've got to be, 1 minute you've got to be in the chamber speaking, next minute you've got to be dealing with emails, next minute you've got to be meeting constituents, next minute you still got to be running your office and taking care of your staff. It's such a huge amount of juggling. And then of course, if you're a minister, you do all that on top of your role as an MP, and so being able to manage your time effectively and take care of yourself and the people you work with and the constituents that you look after. I think time management is a really, really good skill to learn.
100%, yes. Like not going to the toilet just when your lesson's about to start would be a good start for most.
Exactly. And not going down that rabbit hole of all those cats online.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Now, after talking about the education, I usually move on to 2 final questions, but I'm going to take advantage of having an MP and ask an extra question. What do you think, or what is the government's stance, if you can say, on online schooling? Because obviously it's not a brand new thing, but it is kind of new, and especially with COVID, has sort of pushed it to the front more than ever. Is the government looking to embrace it or trying to maybe build up the schools again to bring those back who actually fell in love with online school?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the government policy is because I'm not an education minister, and haven't been for a really long time. But I think what we learned over the pandemic is that there are lots of different ways of working and lots of different ways of learning. And for some people, going into the online world to work or to learn was a nightmare. They didn't like it. They really liked that sort of interaction with other human beings. But you know what? There's a whole group of people actually, for a whole varied amount of reasons, who actually found learning or working in the online space digitally has been a huge benefit for them. You know, it might be because, you know, of where they're living, or it might be because they're not very well, or or you know, it could be a whole range of reasons why people feel that actually working or learning from digitally actually is the way to go for them. And I think that, so if the lockdown and all the COVID experience has achieved anything, I think we've all understood that what we kind of have to go back to is embracing a more kind of hybrid model of life, where actually you can sort of take the benefits of both the sort of real world and the virtual world and smush them together in the best interests of the individual. And certainly, I know my oldest kid is 13, and I know that when I've spoken to his teacher about what sort of provision they have, she said that obviously the kids are back in school, but she said that everything is all still going online as well, so that if kids then have to be off school for any reason, you know, maybe they've got to quarantine, they all can continue to learn in the online space. And I think that's really important, and for some kids that might be a much better solution for them.
So you haven't got sort of any inside information on the idea of regulating online schools, or maybe even, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the word now, state-run online schools or anything like that?
I'm afraid I haven't got the inside scoop in that, but I know that, you know, there's quite a lot of people who are very keen on sort of like home education, for example, and online learning, I think would be a huge benefit, a huge addition to that. So I can see there's certainly a place for online learning and online school in the modern world.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, that was a bit, I know I tried to catch you off guard on that question, but we had to take advantage of having someone who's an MP who's got insight, who we thought might have had an inside knowledge. But
yeah, I wish I knew. I'm sorry. I would have paid more attention if I'd have known you were going to ask that question. I'd have had a nose around and asked the question.
Just drop an email to the education minister and tell him to come join us for our conversation.
Well, we've got a new education secretary now as of last week in the reshuffle. We've got a new one, Nadeem. He's great. He's really cool. So,
do you know him personally?
I do, yeah. He started in politics the same time as I did. So it's us as an MP the same time as me. He's one of my classmates, if you like. And yeah, he's really cool.
So I've always wondered why ministers are put in those roles, because he's not like an ex-teacher or anything, is he? So I'm just sort of wondering what made sort of Boris pick him as the education minister then? Is it, would you have heard some great ideas, or is it what he's shown in the past in other roles?
Well, I think it was largely due to the way that Nadeem has completely smashed the job of being in charge of vaccine deployment. So, you know, Nadeem was brought in. He's actually got a career. He's actually got a business background, and he started a really successful polling company. He was brought in to manage the vaccine rollout, and just did such an amazing job. As you know, we were, you know, the vaccine deployment in the UK was world leading. And, you know, largely that was down to his leadership. And I think the Prime Minister realised that with someone of his skills, that actually it would be great to put him in the Department of Education, because it's so important, such an important department, because, you know, you're shaping people's lives, and it's absolutely fundamental that you've got someone in it who's super bright, but also someone who's got that humanity to them, who understands and able to communicate with people. And I think with, you know, the compassion he's shown during the vaccine rollout, Nadeem has shown all of those qualities. So he's very cool. I think he'll be a great education minister.
Oh, brilliant. And we'll look forward to having him on our podcast soon then. So final two questions then, as promised. The first one being, what is your fondest memory of your time at school?
Well, let's go back to all those drama lessons. So my fondest memory was probably always to do with drama or sport for me. So it would either be performing in a play or taking part in a netball competition. In fact, I was a sports captain at school, and then in fact, I when I became an MP, I started the first ever House of Commons netball team, because there hadn't been any there were lots of sports that the chaps here had organised. There was the boys football team and rugby team and cricket team, but there wasn't any women-led sport here in Parliament. So I started the first ever netball team. So it would, yeah. So for me, it was all about the sport and the drama at school, but just also hanging out with mates, meeting new friends is also really important too.
Very nice. So if your passion was sport and drama sort of thing, what made you sort of co-found what was the name again? The numeracy. I'm trying to see if I can see my notes now. The all-party groups for maths and numeracy. Then, if your passion was drama and sport, why did you suddenly decide to create that then?
Well, what it was is I used to sit on a select committee in Parliament, which is they sort of hold government departments to account. I was on the business one, and I became really interested in adult literacy and numeracy. So there is a large number of adults in the UK who don't have the reading or arithmetic skills that one might expect of an adult. In fact, a lot of them don't have the skills one might expect of an 11-year-old. So I was leading a piece of work we were doing in the select committee on adult literacy and numeracy, and we were taking evidence and putting suggestions through to the government. And what it became clear is that nobody will say to you, "Oh, I really struggle with reading. I don't read very well." People don't ever admit to that, but people will very freely say, "I'm rubbish with numbers. I can't do maths." And that's almost acceptable. And I began to think that that's actually a problem, because we should be as ashamed of saying we can't do maths as we are of saying we can't read. And we should put in place policies to help support people to be more numerate, because we need that in our everyday life. Whether it's when we go and do our shopping and working out what something's going to cost, and then making sure we've been given the right change, to managing our household finances, making sure we don't go overdrawn in our bank account and things. So those sort of day-to-day math skills are so important, and it shouldn't be acceptable to say I can't do maths. We should support people to be able to improve those skills, and so that's why I started that group.
Oh, that's fantastic. I actually did a bit of research when I was doing my PGCE. That was a comment that came up from our lecturer, and yeah, we did a bit of research ourselves into that. So that's fascinating, and it does seem. I'm glad you say it does seem to be being a maths teacher myself. Actually, I should say it is something that is so common. Like, so many parents would be like, "Oh, I was bad at maths anyway," and then it's sort of okay to pass that on. But like you say, not many people will sit there and say, I can't read that book, so my kid's not going to read their book." Yeah, it's an interesting culture, because since my international teaching, especially when I was in the Middle East and here in Asia, that's not a positive thing parents were saying. It's definitely not something they pass on to their kids. So I do think it's a very British thing, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm glad you said that. That's really cool to know. That's sort of at government level now being looked at. Brilliant. And sorry, the last question, because I sort of shoehorned in a question in between the last one, and it will be, if you could pass on one piece of advice to students at school now, whether they're just entering the schooling system or just about to leave it, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think probably when you're at school, you there's all this information flying around, and you think to yourself, "Oh, I'll deal with this another day. I'll learn this another day. I'll address this another day." But actually, that's the point of your life where you've got so much opportunity just to soak everything up like a sponge and find out what it is that really interests you and excites you, and pursue it. Because as you get older, if you try and go back and start that learning again, it's really difficult because life gets in the way. So just use when you're at school, just take all the opportunities to learn about all the stuff that you're really interested in, because you never know whether that might lead to something really exciting in your future. And the best place to get all that info is when you're young and you've got all that information at your fingertips.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's a lovely note to end on. So for any of your constituents who may be watching or people who are just interested in your career, where could they possibly find you and what social media platforms are you on?
Okay, you can find me everywhere. I've got my own website, Caroline for Gosport. I'm on Twitter, CJ Dinenage, and Instagram, and also LinkedIn and Facebook. So I'm all over the shop. You can't miss me.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Caroline. It's been a pleasure talking to you and a real insight, actually. So yes, thank you very much. And we hope everyone enjoyed listening to us as much as I have talking to you.
Thanks, Danny. Great to see you again, and best wishes to you and all your fabulous viewers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for watching our podcast today. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss out on the new ones we post every Monday and Wednesday. If you are interested in enrolling yourself or someone else into the British Online School, be sure to visit our website, britishonlineschool.co.uk, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and send us a direct message there as well. Just use the handle @BritOnlineSchool, spelled SCH, and you can find all our links below. Have a fantastic day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.